My sister took my $50K gift for her kids. Then I found her secret plan. Thanksgiving last year was supposed to be special. I'd spent weeks planning it, maybe too many weeks because I kept worrying it wouldn't be enough. My house in Boise's North End smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon from the pumpkin pie I'd baked that morning. The dining room table covered with my favorite quilt, a patchwork of blues and golds I'd stitched during late nights after my husband Carl passed 5 years ago, looked perfect, or at least I thought it did. I'd set out my grandmother's china, the kind with little roses around the edges, and lit a couple of candles, even though it was barely noon. Boise's November air was crisp outside, sneaking through the cracked window, and I could hear kids riding bikes down the street, their laughter mixing with the hum of the neighbor's leaf blower. I was 60, retired from nursing, but still running my quilt business online. It wasn't much, just enough to keep me busy and pay the bills. My sister, Rachel, was coming over with her kids, Liam and Sophie. Rachel's 38, a real estate agent who's always talking about the next big deal. She's got this way of lighting up a room, all smiles and quick stories, but sometimes I catch her looking at me like she's sizing me up. I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining it. My friend Margaret, who works at the Boise Public Library, was coming too. I'd invited her because she's family in her own way, always there with a book recommendation or a glass of wine when I need to talk. I'd been planning a surprise for Liam and Sophie. They're good kids. Liam's 16, quiet, loves sketching birds in his notebook. Sophie's 12, always asking questions about my quilts. I'd saved $50,000 from my quilt sales over the years, and I wanted to put it in a trust fund for their college. I could picture their faces lighting up, maybe even Rachel tearing up. I hadn't told anyone, not even Margaret. It felt like a big moment, like something Carl would have been proud of. I kept fussing with the table settings, moving the napkins back and forth, wondering if I should have bought new ones. Did they look cheap? I don't know why I cared so much. When Rachel arrived, her SUV squealed into the driveway. Liam carried a store-bought apple pie and Sophie hugged me, her ponytail bouncing. Rachel was in a rush, as usual, her phone buzzing in her hand. "Evelyn, this place looks amazing," she said, but her eyes were on her screen. I brushed it off. She's busy, I told myself. Single mom, 2 kids, tough job, I get it. We sat down to eat, the turkey a little drier than I'd hoped. Margaret told a story about a library patron who returned a book 20 years late, and we all laughed. I felt warm, like maybe this was what family was supposed to feel like. After the pie, I stood up, my hands shaking a bit. "I've got something to say," I started. My voice sounded too loud in my own ears. I told them about the $50,000 trust fund for Liam and Sophie. "I want you both to have a shot at college. Whatever you want to do," I said, looking at them. Liam blushed, mumbling a thank you. Sophie grinned, asking if she could study art. Rachel's smile was tight, like she was holding her breath. Wow, Evelyn, that's generous," she said, but her voice was flat. She reached for her wine glass, then set it down too fast, the liquid sloshing. I expected more, maybe a hug, or at least a real thank you. I don't know what I wanted. I sat back down, my chest tight. Was I being silly, expecting too much? Rachel's phone buzzed again, and she stepped outside to take the call. I heard her whisper, "This could change everything for us." I thought she meant the trust fund. I was wrong. Looking back, I should have asked her about that call right then. But I didn't. I just cut another slice of pie and told myself everything was fine. The day after Thanksgiving, I woke up to a quiet house. The North End was still, except for the occasional jogger passing by on Harrison Boulevard, their sneakers crunching on fallen leaves. My dining room was a mess, dirty plates stacked in the sink, leftover turkey wrapped in foil. I made coffee using the old drip machine Carl loved and sat at my desk in the office, a cramped room off the kitchen. The walls were covered with quilt sketches, fabric swatches pinned up like a patchwork map. My laptop hummed, and a pile of receipts sat next to it, reminders of orders I needed to ship. I wasn't ready to deal with them. My head was still stuck on Rachel's reaction yesterday. That tight smile, the way she ducked out for that phone call. I kept telling myself it was nothing. She was stressed. She's always stressed. Then I saw it. A piece of paper on the floor, half under the desk. I picked it up, thinking it was a quilt order. It was an email printed out from someone named Tom Reynolds to Rachel. The subject line read, Boise Heights deal, $50K by Monday. My stomach twisted. I read it, my hands shaking a little. Tom wrote about a real estate flip in Boise's up-and-coming Heights neighborhood, a fixer-upper they'd sell for a profit. Your $50K seals the deal, it said. We'll split the payout 60-40. I sat there, staring at the words, trying to make sense of it. $50,000. The exact amount I'd set aside for Liam and Sophie's trust fund. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account, my fingers fumbling on the keys. I don't know why I was so nervous. Maybe I already knew what I'd find. There it was, a transfer of $50,000, 2 days ago, to an account I didn't recognize. I cross-checked the account number with the email. It matched Tom's details. My coffee went cold on the desk. Rachel had taken the money. My money. The kids' money. I felt sick, like I'd been punched. But then I thought, maybe it's a mistake. Maybe she didn't mean to. Rachel's impulsive, sure, but she wouldn't steal from her own kids. Would she? I started digging through old emails, bank statements, anything I could find. The office smelled like dust and lavender from a candle I'd forgotten to blow out. I found records of things I'd paid for over the years. Back in 2018, I covered $24,000 for Rachel's rent when she lost a big client. Then there was $5,000 for Sophie's braces in 2021, because Rachel said insurance wouldn't cover it. I bought Liam a $2,500 laptop last year for his art classes, and there were emergency loans. $20,000 over 5 years for car repairs, medical bills, you name it. I never asked her to pay me back. I thought that's what sisters do. Help each other. But sitting there, with that email in my hand, I wondered if I'd been wrong. Had I been helping or just making it easy for her to lean on me? I called Margaret. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm but tired. She'd been up late shelving books at the library. "Evelyn, you okay?" she asked. I told her about the email, the bank transfer, everything. My voice cracked, and I hated that. I didn't want to sound weak. Margaret listened, then said, "Tom's bad news. He's been in and out of shady deals around Boise for years. Rachel's been talking to him again?" I didn't know. Rachel never mentioned Tom, her ex-boyfriend, the contractor who'd left her when Sophie was a baby. I thought he was out of her life. Margaret's words stuck with me. Rachel wasn't just impulsive. She was desperate, always chasing some big win to prove she could make it on her own. I remembered her at 25, crying in my kitchen after a bad breakup, saying she'd never be good enough. I'd hugged her, paid her bills, told her she was strong. Maybe she believed me too much, or not enough. I don't know. I kept thinking about Liam and Sophie, how they deserved better. I wanted to call Rachel, scream at her, demand answers. But what if I was wrong? What if I made a scene and ruined everything? I sat there, the email crumpled in my hand, wondering when I'd stop trusting my own sister. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights after finding that email. My office felt smaller, the quilt sketches on the walls crowding me in. I kept rereading the bank statement, the $50,000 transfer staring back like an accusation. I wanted to call Rachel right away, but I didn't. I was scared of what she'd say, or worse, what she wouldn't. Instead, I texted her on Sunday morning asking her to meet me at her apartment that evening. "Bring Liam and Sophie," I said. "It's important." She replied with a quick, "Okay," which felt too casual, like she didn't know what was coming. Or maybe she did. I wasn't sure. Rachel's apartment was in downtown Boise, a sleek high-rise off 8th Street with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Boise River Greenbelt, where holiday lights twinkled in the dusk. The lobby smelled like pine from a Christmas wreath, and the elevator hummed softly. I'd always thought her place was too fancy for a single mom, but she'd said it was an investment. I should have questioned that. When I knocked, Sophie opened the door, her hair in a messy bun. "Aunt Evelyn," she said, hugging me. Liam was on the couch, sketching in his notebook, barely looking up. Rachel stood by the kitchen counter, pouring herself a glass of red wine. Her apartment was all sharp edges, glass coffee table, stainless steel appliances, a single abstract painting on the wall. It felt cold, nothing like my cluttered house with its mismatched quilts. "Sit down, Evelyn," Rachel said, her voice bright but strained. She was wearing a blazer like she'd just come from a showing. I stayed standing, clutching the printed email and bank statement in my purse. My heart was pounding, and I felt a little dizzy, like I was about to ruin everything. Maybe I should have waited, talked to her privately. But I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Rachel," I said, my voice shakier than I wanted. "I found something, an email from Tom, about the $50,000 I gave for the kids' trust fund." Her face froze, the wine glass halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about?" she said, but her eyes darted to the side like she was looking for an escape. I pulled out the email and read it aloud, my voice getting louder with each word. "Your $50K seals the deal. Boise Heights flip. Split the payout 60-40. Sophie looked confused, glancing between us. Liam put down his pencil, his jaw tight. I held up the bank statement. "The money's gone, Rachel. You transferred it to Tom. Why?" Rachel set her glass down hard, the wine sloshing onto the counter. "You went through my stuff?" she snapped. "That's private, Evelyn." I blinked, thrown off. Was I wrong to look? No, this was my money, the kids' money. "Don't turn this on me," I said. "You took $50,000 meant for Liam and Sophie. Explain it." "Blaine." She crossed her arms, her blazer wrinkling. "Okay, fine, I invested it. Tom's flipping a house in the Heights. It's a sure thing. We'll double the money, maybe triple it. I did it for the kids' future." "For the kids?" I almost laughed, but it came out like a choke. "You didn't ask me. You didn't tell them." I looked at Liam and Sophie, who were staring at their mom. Sophie's eyes were wide, like she didn't recognize her. Liam stood up, his voice quiet but sharp. "You lied to Aunt Evelyn? That was our college money." Rachel flinched, but she didn't back down. "I'm their mother, Liam. I know what's best. Evelyn, you've got plenty of money. You don't need to make a big deal out of this." I felt something break inside me. All those years, paying her rent, buying Sophie's braces, giving her loans I never expected back. I thought I was helping her, keeping her afloat after her divorce, after Tom left her. But she wasn't drowning. She was using me. "I gave you everything," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. $24,000 for rent, $5,000 for braces, $20,000 in loans, and you stole from your own kids. Rachel's face softened for a second, like she might apologize, but then she straightened up. "You're so controlling, Evelyn. Always acting like you're the perfect sister, holding your money over my head. I'm trying to build something for my family." Sophie started crying, and Liam grabbed his jacket. "I'm out of here," he said, heading for the door. "Liam, wait," Rachel called, but he was gone. I looked at her, standing there in her perfect apartment, and I felt so small, like I'd been wrong about everything. "I trusted you," I said. "I thought we were family." Rachel didn't answer, just picked up her wine glass again. I walked out, Sophie's sobs echoing behind me. The elevator ride down was silent, but my head was screaming. Had I pushed too hard? Should I have listened to her side? But no, she'd lied. She'd taken everything. I stepped into the cold Boise night, the holiday lights blurring in my eyes, and wondered how I'd let it come to this. I didn't go home after leaving Rachel's apartment. I drove around Boise, past the lit-up Capitol building, the streets quiet except for a few late-night dog walkers. My hands were still shaking, and I kept replaying the argument. Rachel's cold eyes, Sophie's tears, Liam's slammed door. I felt like I'd lost something, not just the $50,000, but something bigger. Family, maybe. Or the idea of it. I ended up at a cafe near Boise State University, a little place called Java House with mismatched wooden tables and the smell of fresh coffee. Christmas lights were strung across the windows, blinking red and green. It was Monday morning now, and I hadn't slept much since Sunday. Margaret met me there, her scarf still dusted with snow from the light flurry outside. She slid into the booth across from me, her librarian glasses fogging up from the warmth. "Evelyn, you look like you've been through a war," she said, not unkindly. I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong, more like a cough. I told her everything, Rachel's lies, the real estate deal with Tom, the way she'd turned it around on me like I was the problem. My coffee sat untouched, the steam curling up and disappearing. I kept twisting a napkin in my hands, tearing little pieces off. "I thought I was helping her all these years," I said, "paying her bills, giving her money, but maybe I just made it worse." Margaret leaned back, sipping her latte. She's always been the practical one, the kind who'd tell you to return a library book before it's overdue. "You're not Rachel's mom, Evelyn," she said. "You've been acting like it, though, paying for everything, fixing her messes. She's 38. It's time she stands on her own." Her words hit hard, like a slap I didn't see coming. I wanted to argue, to say Rachel needed me, that she was struggling. But was she? I thought about her fancy apartment, that glass coffee table, the way she always had a new blazer but never enough to pay her own rent. I'd been so proud of helping her, but maybe Margaret was right. Maybe I'd been enabling her, letting her treat me like a bank. I stared out the window at the students walking by, their backpacks heavy, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I envied them. "What do I do now?" I asked, half to Margaret, half to myself. My quilt business was my lifeline, bringing in $10,000 a month, sometimes more. Rachel had relied on it too, always asking for loans when her commissions dried up. I'd never said no, but now, thinking about it, I felt tired. Tired of being the one who always gave. "What if I sold the business?" I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You've built that from nothing. It's your baby." She wasn't wrong. I'd started making quilts after Carl died, stitching late into the night to keep the loneliness away. It grew into a real business. Etsy orders, craft fairs at the Boise Farmers Market, even a feature in a local magazine. But it also tied me to Rachel's needs, her constant emergencies. I thought about Liam and Sophie, how I'd wanted that trust fund to give them a future. Rachel had taken that from them, from me. I didn't want to keep living like this, always waiting for her next crisis. "I need to let go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "of the business, of Rachel's problems, all of it." Margaret nodded, but I could tell she was worried. "It's a big step, Evelyn. Are you sure?" I wasn't. Not really. What if I regretted it? What if Rachel really needed me and I was just being selfish? But then I remembered her voice in that apartment, calling me controlling, acting like my money was hers to take. I called my lawyer, Susan, from the cafe parking lot, the snow dusting my coat. "I want to explore selling the business," I told her, my breath visible in the cold. It felt reckless, like jumping off a cliff, but also right. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself, or trying to. I wasn't sure I knew how. 3 months after that night at Rachel's apartment, I moved to a small house in Eagle, Idaho, about 10 miles from Boise. It was a single-story cottage with white siding and a front yard full of lavender bushes that buzzed with bees in the spring. The Boise River was just a short walk away, its water glinting under the cottonwood trees. I'd always loved Eagle's quiet, the way you could hear birds instead of traffic. My old house in the North End was too big, too full of memories. Carl's laugh, Rachel's late-night visits asking for help, the quilt sketches I'd pinned up hoping to make something lasting. The new place had a tiny back porch, just big enough for a rocking chair and a table for my coffee. It felt like mine, not someone else's anchor. Selling the quilt business was harder than I expected. Susan, my lawyer, found a buyer, a craft store chain in Spokane, within weeks. They paid $500,000, more than I'd dreamed when I started sewing after Carl died. I sat in Susan's office downtown, signing papers, the Boise skyline visible through her window. The money meant I could retire for good, no more late nights packing orders for Etsy. But it also meant letting go of something I'd built, stitch by stitch. I cried in the parking lot afterward, not sure if it was relief or loss, maybe both. I kept thinking about Rachel, how she'd called me controlling, how I'd let her lean on me for so long. Had I done the right thing? I wasn't sure, but I was tired of carrying her weight. I heard from Liam a few weeks after the sale. He showed up at my new house, his sketchbook tucked under his arm, looking taller than I remembered. "Mom's in trouble," he said, sitting on my porch steps. Rachel's real estate deal with Tom had fallen apart. The house in Boise Heights was a money pit, riddled with mold and bad wiring. She was in debt, scrambling to keep her apartment. Liam's voice was quiet, but I could tell he was angry. "She's sorry, Aunt Evelyn, but she's still, I don't know, Mom." I nodded, not sure what to say. I wanted to hug him, tell him it'd be okay, but I didn't know if it would. "Sophie was staying with a friend," he said, too upset to talk to Rachel. I felt a pang for them, those kids caught in their mom's mess. I didn't tell Liam, but I'd already done something for him and Sophie. I set up a new $50,000 trust fund for their college, locked tight so only they could access it at 18. No way for Rachel to touch it. Susan made sure of that with legal papers I barely understood. I also paid off Rachel's $15,000 car loan, not because she deserved it, but because I wanted her to have no excuse to call me for money. It was my last check to her, my way of cutting the cord. I didn't tell her either. Let her figure it out when the bank stopped calling. Rachel hadn't contacted me since our fight. The silence hurt, like a bruise I kept pressing. I missed her laugh, the way she'd tease me about my messy office, but I also felt lighter, like I'd set down a bag I'd been carrying too long. I joined a gardening club in Eagle, meeting every Tuesday at the community center. The women there were kind, swapping tips about lavender and tomatoes, inviting me to potlucks. I bought a pair of gardening gloves, bright yellow, and planted herbs in my yard. It was small, but it was something I did for me. Not for Rachel, not for the kids, just me. I kept waiting to feel guilty, to wonder if I'd been too harsh. Sometimes I did, late at night, staring at the ceiling. But then I'd walk to the river, watch the water move, and think maybe I was finally learning to live my own life. It was late spring now, and I was sitting on my porch in Eagle, the Boise River catching the last of the sunset, all gold and pink against the cottonwoods. My cottage smelled like the basil I'd planted in the yard, the leaves brushing my fingers when I watered them. I'd set out a glass of wine on the little table next to my rocking chair, but I hadn't touched it yet. The air was warm, the kind of evening where you hear crickets and the occasional splash of a fish in the river. I'd started keeping a gardening journal, scribbling notes about which herbs liked shade and which ones didn't. It was a small thing, but it made me feel like I was building something new, something just for me. I wasn't used to that. A letter came in the mail that morning, tucked between a seed catalog and a flyer for the Eagle Saturday Market. The envelope had Rachel's handwriting, careful and slanted, not the rush scrawl she used to leave on Post-it notes in my kitchen. I'd stared at it for a long time before opening it, my hands hesitating. Part of me wanted to hear from her, to know she was okay. Part of me was afraid of what she'd say, afraid I'd feel that old pull to fix her problems. I took a deep breath and read it on the porch, the paper crinkling in my hands. "Dear Evelyn," it started. "I've been trying to write this for months. I keep starting over because I don't know how to say I'm sorry without sounding like I'm asking for something. I'm not. I messed up. I took the $50,000 because I thought I could make it bigger, make a life for Liam and Sophie where they wouldn't worry about money. I wanted to prove I could do it on my own, without you. But I was wrong. I saw you as my safety net, not my sister. I'm sorry for that, for everything." She wrote about the deal collapsing, how she's working part-time at a coffee shop now, trying to pay off her debts. "I miss you," she ended. "I don't expect you to write back. I just needed you to know. I set the letter down and looked at the river. My chest felt tight, but not like before, not like anger. It was softer, like sadness mixed with something else. Relief, maybe. Rachel was trying to change, or at least she said she was. I wanted to believe her, but I'd believed her too many times before. I thought about her in that fancy apartment, pouring wine, telling me I was controlling. But I also remembered her at 20, sitting on my couch, crying because she didn't know how to be a mom to Liam. She was always running, always chasing something, money, respect, a way out of her mistakes. I didn't hate her. I just didn't trust her anymore. I wrote a reply that night sitting at my kitchen table, a single lamp casting shadows on the wall. Dear Rachel, I started. Thank you for your letter. I'm glad you're finding your way. I forgive you, but I need time. I'm learning to live for myself now. I hope you understand. I didn't mail it right away. It's still in my drawer next to my gardening journal. Maybe I'll send it someday, maybe not. I don't know what's right yet. I joined a book club last week, a group of women who meet at the Eagle Library. We're reading a novel about sisters, which made me laugh when I saw the title. I'm planning a trip to Yellowstone this summer. Just me, a rental car, and a map. It scares me a little, going alone, but it also feels good. I keep thinking about Liam and Sophie, hoping they're okay. I check the trust fund statement sometimes, just to make sure it's safe for them. The rest is up to them and Rachel. I wonder sometimes if I was too hard on her, if I should have given her another chance. But then I walk to the river, feel the sun on my face, and think maybe this is what I needed all along. To let go, to live. If you've ever had to walk away from family, what did you do? How did you decide? I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment below and tell me what city you're from. I'm curious how far this reaches.